Hey everybody, so we're doing another one of our literary mukbang videos. I'm just enjoying some shrimp while discussing my recent completion of one of the masterpieces by one of my all-time favorite authors, Yukio Mishima. This is Runaway Horses. And sorry to make you sit and watch me eat, but I've got music to work on and I've got to rehearse a guitar solo that I'm recording tonight. Anyway, so Runaway Horses is a book that I've been excited to get into for a while. It is the sequel to what is arguably my favorite Yukio Mishima novel, Spring Snow. And Spring Snow is the one that it's again considered to be his one of his magnum opuses. All of these books are part of an ongoing series. I'll get to that in a moment. But Spring Snow is the one that people so often say, if you've never read Mishima before, start with Spring Snow. And it's the one when I'm gifting people a Mishima book to try to get them into it and that sort of thing, into his writing, this is the one I go to. It's incredible. So a brief setup for Spring Snow is relevant. Spring Snow, Runaway Horses, this book, The Temple of Dawn, which I haven't read yet, and a final book called The Decay of the Angel are all a series of interconnected books that form what is known as the Sea of Fertility tetralogy. And it's Mishima's final magnum opus work that altogether they form his magnum opus work that he worked on right up until the day he died. It was completed and the work was begun and completed in the final stage of his life, with the final book, The Decay of the Angel, being finished the day that he died. And so it is very much the series to go to get a full or a great image of Mishima the artist, Mishima the intellectual, the political thinker, the cultural commentator, all of these things. So, oh my god, I fucking love shrimp, man. My doctor told me I needed to get more seafood in my diet a while back, and so I've just been really discovering all types of things. The only thing I can't stand is crab, really. But anyway, so in Spring Snow, the story is of a young man, tells of a young man named Kirawaki, and he is a part of the Matsuge family in Japan's aristocracy. And so the book takes place in this, this beautiful aristocratic playland, wonderland of the Japanese upper crust at the turn of the last century. And Kiyoaki gets the story of Spring Snow is the story of Kiyoaki getting a young woman, a young aristocrat woman, pregnant, and all of the fallout that happens, the scandal and the fallout that happens from that. Now, it's not a spoiler to say that Kiyoaki dies at the end of the book, because the series itself deals with the reincarnation of this person, the reincarnations of this person. And so obviously, because they're reincarnated in every book, it's not, or a new reincarnated person in every book, it's not a spoiler to say that all of these characters have to die to carry on the series. Anyway, so that's the primary story, but central to the development of the story of Spring Snow is the character of Honda, who is Kiyoaki's best friend. And Honda is very much a side character in the first book, but his perspective on things and his watching he's very much, it's very obvious that he's our eyes into the story and the narrative of the story, and that matters because throughout each of the subsequent books, Honda goes through his life. Each of the subsequent books tells of Honda's life and his discovery of these people that he believes are reincarnations of Kiyoaki. And so the first book obviously does not deal with reincarnation directly, but there are things that happen within that story that are the setup for Honda to realize the things that become the setups for Honda to realize that these other people are Kiyowaki reincarnated. So, all of that is a preamble to, pardon me, all of that is a preamble to talking about Runaway Horses. Now, Runaway Horses is widely regarded as the strongest book in the series, and pardon me, is widely regarded as the strongest book in the series, and so far, I haven't read the other two yet, but I wholeheartedly agree. It is extraordinary. It's definitely the longest book in the series, and what we're dealing with here, now Honda is a 38-year-old man, and he is a highly regarded judge in the Tokyo justice system. And he meets this young man who's a young right-wing radical, who starts out as an excellent kendo fencer, and that's how he meets him, but how they meet. But Honda begins to very quickly realize that Isao, this young man, this young right-wing activist, is Kiyowaki reincarnated. And so there's two plots, there's two themes. I wouldn't call it an A plot and a B plot, but it's more like we have the primary story within just Runaway Horses, which is the story of Isao. Isao is planning a right-wing overthrowing a coup, a right-wing overthrowing of the of Japanese capitalist society and that sort of thing. And essentially he's planning something on par with like Project Mayhem and Fight Club, and so that the narrative deals with him putting together the people that are going to pull this off, and his goals and ambitions, and also very critically the development of his psychological state as he plans to go through with this action. And then the overarching theme, the overarching plot, the plot that ties all of these stories together, is Honda's relationship with these characters. And in this case, his relationship with Isao, he's initially just impressed by what he sees as a quality young man, but then he becomes very, very concerned about this radical right-wing political shift direction that Isao is going, and he wants to try to reel this young man in, try to save him, try to teach him maturity. And this is where it gets really, really. I'm sorry, every couple of minutes you're going to have to listen to me stop and emphasize how much I love shrimp. Putting the sauce on it, man, it just goes up and clears my nostrils and everything. Oh, wow. Oh, God. And I always feel so good after eating shrimp. Anyway, what's so interesting in this, the way these stories intertwine. It's well known, if you know about Yukio Mishima, you know that Mishima himself later in life became a right-wing radical and a prominent right-wing public intellectual, but someone who started his own private army, the Tatanakai. And he died because they famously took over a Japanese military base, held the commanders hostage, and in the process of doing that, Mishima committed suicide, committed harakiri. And so, in so doing, there's always a strong parallel that's drawn between Mishima and Isao, Mishima's real life, and Isao and Runaway Horses. Understandably so. But when people read this, they tend to read it. I still love shrimp. When people read this, they tend to read it through the lens of the political allegory. And no doubt there's political allegory there. One of the central themes of this novel is exploring the social psychology of Japan as Japan entered World War II. What were the cultural attitudes and intellectual perspectives that were prevailing in Japan that led Japan to doing the things and taking the position that it took in World War II, and all of that. That's one of the central themes that he's really exploring here. And so, no doubt, there is a connection between Mishima's political activism and his writing in Runaway Horses. But what's interesting is, to me, it does not read as a direct advocacy for that. Mishima was keenly fascinated by the development, the coming of age story, if you will, the development of adolescent into adulthood and things like that. We see very positive portrayals. We see, for example, a very positive portrayal of that development in The Sound of Waves, which is another great one to read if you're just getting into him. Or another great one to read if you're just getting into him is the Sailor. Sorry, I was going to say like the Ernest Hemingway, the Old Man in the Sea, but the Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea. This is another great one to read if you're just getting into him, but it's a much darker, more Lord of the Flies type interpretation of adolescence and growing up and that sort of thing. And what's so interesting, he has this fascination on this critical time period of the teenage years going into adulthood. And that seems to be what he's really meditating on here in Runaway Horses. What he really wants to think about is that the mindset of young people as it was going into World War II, and then also just the natural impulsiveness and intensity of growing up and those feelings we have when we're young and we want to take over the world and that sort of thing. And the idea in the Sailor, you're saying the fisherman, the Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea, was, without going, I did a whole commentary on that after I read it, but that you can view on here. But the thing about that story was, it was basically, I read it as a meditation on the time in your life when you realize, you start entering your teenage years and you realize that so much of what the adults have told you about the world is bullshit, and you feel this kind of rage and anger at the adults for lying to you, and you want to strike back at them. It's that theme explored. That was what I felt was the underlying theme of the story. In Runaway Horses, we have a character that's on the other end of his teenage years. And he's on the other end of his teenage years. He's entering manhood, but he still has all of that wild impulsivity that's associated with youth. Pardon me. And so what happens is you're reading this narrative, you're reading the story. You see things from Esau's perspective, and Esau wants to be this young, passionate, right-wing revolutionary that, his greatest dream is to die in the service of the emperor and that sort of thing. And he is passionately fixated on that. And when you're seeing things from his perspective, you just feel this overpowering intensity and passion radiating off of this person. But then over and over again, as soon as you feel that intensity, the focus, the perspective switches back to Honda and the other adults in Esau's life. And they're looking at it from a different perspective of, how do we rein in and control this manic, impulsive young man who is certainly very passionate and has a lot of strong beliefs and strong will, but he needs to tailor that with maturity and an acceptance of the principles of adulthood and manhood and that sort of thing. And throughout the whole thing, it feels like what Esau is really fighting against is not the Western imperialist, capitalist enterprises that he claims to despise so much. It feels like what he's really fighting against are these adults that are trying to stultify and nullify this furious passion that he has. And so it's so fascinating. What's so fascinating about it is Mishima, is a prose stylist par excellence, And so you feel really the depth of feeling in both sides of it, and you get lost in both perspectives throughout as they kind of are fighting back and forth with each other. It is an absolutely extraordinary read. I gave a few nights ago, I gave myself an eye strain headache because I read like, 50 plus pages in one setting, and I was just, it just get locked into it. Mishima is definitely someone who saw the beauty in the world around him and wanted to capture and articulate that beauty in the strongest possible terms. And Runaway Horses really sees him. I love shrimp. Runaway Horses really sees him doing that, and doing that in this very, very mesmerizing way. And it is a it is a very wonderful character-driven study of this person Esau and everything that we're learning about him, and everything that we're, all these things we're learning about him, the development, the character development that continues throughout this book happens well into, all the way up to the final sentences of the book. We are developing this character. It ends in a way that it ends in a way that is expectable, or expectable, is that a word? It ends in a way that you might expect, but not the way you are likely to expect, if that makes sense. The ending is not terribly surprising, but it's also not necessarily the ending that you might see coming. So he has in the question of will Esau or will he not be successful with his right-wing coup, Mishima has a very clever and interesting way to kind of split the difference and find a somewhat unexpected middle ground between the two. It is beautiful, extraordinary writing. It is absolutely just lush, gorgeous prose. Every sentence that he constructs just has this beautiful artistry to it. It has almost a sense of melody to it. And Mishima, ironically, as much as he's claimed to oppose Western ideals and Western culture and Western imperialism, he craved acceptance by the Western literary establishment, so much so that he spoke fluent English, and when his books were translated, he worked with the translator to make sure that they were every single sentence conveyed exactly what he meant. So you have some of the best translating of a writer's work, for a non-English speaking writer's work that you'll ever get in this translation. It's just achingly beautiful writing. And that, above and beyond whatever you think of Mishima's politics, whatever you think of his, his almost fetishistic worship of the Japanese emperor and all of that sort of thing, whatever you think of that, the writing is extraordinary, and that's what moves me to his writing. Not his politics or anything like that, but just the quality of the writing and the depth of the character study is so extraordinary. He writes character studies on the level of Dostoevsky or F. Scott Fitzgerald or William Faulkner, that kind of thing. He's on par with that. And so I like I said, I cannot recommend Runaway Horses enough. It is phenomenal. Obviously, if you're going to get into the Sea of Fertility, read Spring Snow first. You'll be able to follow Runaway Horses pretty well without having read Spring Snow. But, I mean, there's no reason to start on the second course of a phenomenal, amazing, fine cuisine dinner. Start with the first course and enjoy the whole thing. I like shrimp.